We all grow up hearing about them, and some even idolize to get into one. But how much do you really know about the Ivy League schools? From tough academics and competitive sports teams, to invite-only societies and school admittance scandals, we've covered all the bases to give you the goods. Get ready for some odd but still interesting information. Prepare to learn all about the Ivy League. 14. So, why is it called the Ivy League? Nobody knows for sure exactly how or why the Ivy League got its moniker. According to Professor Theyre, a history professor at Dartmouth College, it possibly came about through a New York Herald Tribune sports writer. The writer was tasked with covering a football game between the University of Pennsylvania and Columbia in 1937, instead of being assigned a game featuring his alma mater. He supposedly referred to the schools as Ivy League in reference to the school buildings themselves, which were covered in ivy. He probably thought the term was a slight, but instead, it became a popular nickname and is hung on to this day. 13. Prestigious athletic programs. Once upon a time, the Ivy League schools weren't as well known for their academics as they were for their athletics. Back in the early 1900s, the schools were recognized as elite because of the prestige of their teams of various sports. In 1902, the Eastern Intercollegiate Basketball League was formed by Cornell, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Columbia. By 1936, standards for college football were set by the newly formed Ivy Group, and by 1954, the standards in the agreement covered all college sports. Today, the schools are just as known for the high-level schooling students receive, although their sports teams are still very prestigious as well. 12. The schools are really old. Remember the American Revolution, the huge bloody revolt that took place between 1765 and 1783? Well, did you know that out of 8 Ivy League colleges, 7 of them were formed before the Revolution? The University of Pennsylvania was established by Benjamin Franklin in 1740, Princeton was created in 1746, Columbia University in 1754, Brown University in 1764, and Dartmouth College in 1769. Prior to those schools, 2 were already well established. Yale had been around since 1702, and the oldest of the Ivy League schools, Harvard, was formed way back in 1636. That leaves the newest of the colleges, Cornell, which was founded in 1865 and is considered very young. 11. They're pretty hard to get into. Do you want to attend an Ivy League school? Do you want your children to have a shot at getting in? Well, you better make sure that they do great in high school, otherwise there might not be much of a chance. Roughly 97% of students that apply to colleges like Yale and Columbia made their way into the top 10% of their class in high school, and that's just the applicants. Ivy League colleges get bombarded with applications, but they can only accept so many. The average acceptance into one of these schools is just 9%. And as an example, think about this. For Harvard's 2021 class, only 2,037 students got accepted into the school out of the 39,506 that applied. Just 5.2%. Competitive. 10. Nobel laureates. If you want a chance at winning a Nobel Prize, you best be getting to studying and working your way into a top school. Nobel laureates come from a whole bunch of places, but on a ranked list of colleges with the most laureates, 5 Ivy League colleges can be found in the top 13. Now, if that doesn't say something, we don't know what will. Of course, Harvard can be found at the very tip-top of that list. The school boasts 158 Nobel Prize winners that have an association with the school through attending or teaching at it. Columbia is 5th on the list, Princeton is 10th, Yale is 11th, and Cornell takes the 12th spot. 9. Olympians. As we said at the beginning of this video, the Ivy League colleges are not only known for their academics, but their athletics as well. While the academic prowess of these universities has become more what they're known for these days, they still produce athletes that compete at the highest levels. Some of these athletes even make it so far as to compete in the Olympics, and in Olympic history, Ivy Leaguers have amassed an insane 475 medals. Now, if that number isn't impressive to you, consider this. If Ivy League schools could be registered as their own country, they would come in 16th for the most medals won by a country, over all of recorded Olympic history. That would fall between Japan's 497 medals and Finland's 470. Crazy, isn't it? 8. Hollywood is banned from Harvard. We know, there have been lots of movies set at Harvard in even the last 20 years, so what do we mean Hollywood is banned? Well, following the 1970 filming of a movie called Love Story on the campus, Harvard decided to ban Hollywood from filming on their property. This is because the production caused significant physical damage to the campus. A few exceptions have been made, but movies like Legally Blonde, Good Will Hunting, and The Social Network have all had to be filmed elsewhere. Who would have thought? 7. The look. You know the style known as preppy? Well, that style is basically an offshoot of the style seen displayed on campuses of Ivy League schools. Said style is actually called Ivy League, and it was first popularized in the early 20th century. It reflected the culture and money associated with Ivy League colleges, and now many brands have incorporated the look. Ralph Lauren, Lacoste, and Tommy Hilfiger are all brands that have made quite a bit of money off of styles that make wearers look as though they're tennis players, sailors, horseback riders, and lacrosse stars. 6. The Whiffenpoofs. No, this name is not a joke. It's the name of an a cappella group that was founded in 1909 at Yale University. It began around a table in a tavern near the school and was originally just a quartet. Since then, the group has continued and even grown, and it now consists of 14 Yale seniors, all of whom are replaced every year. As far as collegiate singing groups go, the Whiffenpoofs are the oldest, and notable former members include Cole Porter, Jonathan Coulton, and Prescott Bush. 5. Legacy admission. Now, you'd think that top-ranked, prestigious schools such as the ones found in the Ivy League would be fair about their admittance policies. This isn't quite the case. In fact, legacy admission has been a thing since the early days of these institutions, and the practice still sticks around today. What we mean is, relatives of alumni are more likely to be accepted into one of these schools than your regular old Joe, even if their test scores are lower or their grades aren't as good. These legacy students typically have lower SAT scores than other students, and they account for between 10 and 30% of newly admitted Ivy Leaguers. 4. It's growing and changing. As the world is driving forward and change becomes a necessity, the Ivy League is changing as well. At one point in time, nearly all of the students in the Ivy League were Protestant, wealthy white boys, and that has changed pretty dramatically in the relatively recent past. In 1969, Princeton and Yale started admitting women, and the other Ivy League schools soon followed, although Columbia didn't follow suit until 1981. Shame. Some of the schools did have sister schools that women could attend and get degrees from prior to 1967. Also, the whole white cycle has been broken in recent years as well, with around 50.8% of newly admitted students in 2017 being non-whites, which is a first in the history of the school. 3. Not all great. As with all other academic institutions in the world, not every person who goes to an Ivy League school goes on to do great or even good things. Ted Kaczynski, one of the United States' most notorious domestic terrorists, was a graduate of Harvard. He got a scholarship to the school and began attending at 16, and within a few years, he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics from the school. He was known to be quiet, and many believed him to be a genius, and when he graduated, he had a GPA of 3.12, which was higher than average. He went on to earn a master's degree and then his doctorate, and he taught at the University of Michigan as well as the University of California, Berkeley, where he became the youngest assistant professor of mathematics the school had ever had. He then resigned, ended up moving to a cabin in the woods, and began a reign of terror that got him dubbed the Unabomber. 2. Skull and Bones Society. Now that we've gotten into the darker, slightly more strange side of the Ivy Leagues, we thought it was probably a good time to mention the Skull and Bones Society. What is it? Well, it's a secret society for students at Yale University, and it's a secret society surrounded by mystery and conspiracy. Informally, the organization is simply known as Bones, and the members of the society are called Bonesmen. Sounds dark and mysterious, right? The Skull and Bones Society was founded back in 1832 by Alphonso Taft and William Huntington Russell, and 15 members of the junior class at Yale are selected yearly to join up. Members are selected based on their leadership qualities and various other outstanding traits that they possess. The hall of the Skull and Bones Society is known as the Tomb, and they also own a mysterious island called Deer Island on the St. Lawrence River. Many believe that the society is part of a global conspiracy to gain some kind of world control, and there are even those who assert that Bones may even control the Central Intelligence Agency. Famous members of the Skull and Bones Society include George H.W. and George W. Bush, Paul Giamatti, John Kerry, William Howard Taft, and many more. We've learned some fascinating stuff about the Ivy League so far, and we still have one more section to go. But first, we'd like to ask you, were you ever an Ivy League hopeful with one of the big names in mind for your education? What about the schools drew you in? If you didn't care, why not? Let us know in the comments below. 1. A little problem with admissions. As you're probably aware by now, Yale is now part of a bit of legal trouble involving some of their admission practices. Now, they're not the only school in trouble. In fact, many other schools, mainly in California, are involved in the trouble. It all amounts to admissions fraud into these prestigious, hard-to-get-into universities and colleges. But Yale is the only Ivy League school named in the suit. The trouble involves business leaders, celebrities, coaches, and many more, and their willingness to lie, cheat, and pay for their children to get into these schools. One alleged scheme at the Ivy League school saw a young girl gain admission as a promising soccer star when she does not play soccer, at least not competitively. Her parents paid $1.2 million for the admission of their daughter, and at least $400,000 went to Rudolph Meredith, the head coach of the women's soccer team at the school. The story is still developing, but it's not looking good for any of the schools involved. And Yale, one of the most prestigious on the list, could face quite the backlash before this is all finished. If this video opened your eyes to our oddities, do us a favor and give it a like. Subscribe to our channel so that you never miss out on any of our excellent uploads. And take a peek at this next video we've selected just for you.